All right. Well, let's kick off. This is going to be episode number 3 of the Zan and Jordan show. We've had amazing feedback and comments so far. So I want to take a moment before we kick off and say thank you for everyone who's written into the show, either in the comments below, in the YouTube comments, or people that have reached out to me privately. I've had some really beautiful things said, specifically about being an actually uplifting piece of content in an otherwise pretty distraught and negative doomsday focusing world. So I'm glad that we can provide that kind of service. Kicking off from where we were last time, Zan, anything changed in your world?
Well, not really. No. I've been heads down thinking and writing and reading a lot. So no, there hasn't been not a lot of change at all. Contemplation, I guess.
Yeah. Same background, different day. I've also got the same background now for 2 episodes in a row, which is a little bit of a novelty.
Yeah.
But it feels like soon we'll be celebrating the completion of this cocoon period, but it's been drifting on, morphing, changing, new ideas coming. And I've definitely been very proactive, doing things I often don't do in terms of the logistics and organization and the structure of all the work that we're doing in the world. I'm kind of this roving adventurer who much prefers the artistic and creative side of things, but been getting real and looking at some of the more logistical stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah, what's interesting too is this is normally the weekend of our Amorata International Conference for our Amorata members, but because of this slowdown in the world, we've had to cancel it. So we're doing a virtual one this weekend. So we're excited for that, and we've got a bunch of people who are really excited. So we might run into technical limitations of how many people join, but for our Amorata members, so we're excited for that.
Yeah,
I'm prepping for that.
That might help me understand the kind of lull in the energy, because there's no travel. There's always a travel at this point of year to head over to Bucharest, and our year is organized, of course, around these 2 gatherings, one at the end of May and one at the end of September. And without those in place, it's kind of like, I'm not often sat at home just thinking on the last Saturday night of May.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there you go. But
we'll do it.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Creatively speaking, though, it's quite interesting to sit in a prolonged vacuum.
How's it been for you?
Well, when we started this, I think optimistic mindset was, well, great, we're finally going to be able to sit indoors, and there's going to be no one really expecting anything of us, so we can get everything out of the way and be truly creative. So it was like, okay, there was this golden opportunity handed to us. And as time goes on, it's like, well, we're 2 months in now, and I get to see where the creativity's gotten to and what things have been crystallized. And I think that there's been a few massive threads, like even since the last episode that we did, there's been a few big threads which are really working through me. And one of them, it's, I've spoken for years, and you are as well, about this wanting to find and have an encounter of the transcendent. So what is the sublime exactly? And for me, that kind of exploration kicked in when I was really in the middle of my explorations with women, and in my traveling and single life. I wanted to find the transcendent and the sublime through my interactions with women. And at one point it happened. Who knows how to quantify exactly how what kind of state of consciousness you touched into, but at one point it happened, and then it happened again, and then it happened again. and then all of a sudden it's like, wow, you know, these things that I was seeking all these years, I feel like I don't need to go out and seek them anymore because I know the portal to get there. You know, after you practice something enough, it's like, okay, I know how to get into these timeless states and where you're just drenched in meaning.
And you had that
Um,
more in this isolation time than?
no, no, I had this, I guess my first encounters like this would have happened towards the end of 2014, around that time. Started with one woman I met, you know, and it's like this impossible love affair that had all the ingredients of, yeah, it broke my heart open. I guess the emotions that were involved in that whole love affair, there was so much emotional tension and not knowing, romantic uncertainty of what was going to happen with this. It pulled me to my extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And just the simmer in that was, it just ripped my heart open. And you know, we talk a lot about men that are walled off and the women and the feedback and our workshops and so on. Yeah, I don't quite feel him. He's got a boundary. He's hiding behind some kind of armor or wall. Whatever I had of that around me just got ripped apart, and I was there naked, you know, in this kind of transcendent moment. Um, Loved for who I am, like the baptismal cloth of the alabaster girl, all of these kind of poetic concepts that you've written about, like finally washed over me. And it took me months to put myself together after that, to have an experience. Just like when people say, you know, if you have an experience like a real kind of mystical opening, whether you're traveling or doing some kind of psychedelic drugs, the integration time might be a year.
Yeah.
And it was, because I'm walking around with my head in the clouds, or my head in the floor, like, what befell me? I feel like I've experienced the most holy thing, and I don't know if it really was holy or if it was just me, you know, some weird schizophrenic or shadow or traumatized part of me that's just reading too much into this. I was really on this loop of trying to make sense of what my experience was, and I'd be able to access it again like that. It's very difficult to describe. It's frisson, as we've talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It's those moments where you kind of just drop into a space where the hairs go on end, where you are drenched with an infinite sense of meaning, like everything in life lines up and makes sense and was always meant to be, and nothing in the entire history ought to have been any different. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this moment now. You know, everything clicks, and it's like life is perfection in these brief moments. And I entered into it again, and then a few months later again, and then again. Like I found my portals and I found my ways of getting back there. And this took a few years to really learn, but I can go in there. And of course, when I met my girlfriend, my now girlfriend, that love affair was the culmination of all these transcendent moments that I was seeking for with women. Just the wildest love, the biggest uncertainty, the most gripping seduction. It had it all. You know, it's a love story. It really had all the ingredients.
Yeah.
And then now it's that thing of a seeker, and we talk a lot about the seeker who goes out because he just has to find something for himself in his life. There's this really strong feeling in me in coming back.
Coming
And
back to, what do you mean? Like coming back to home? By
we'll
home, I don't
see.
mean like a house. And I mean like, because, you know, like there's an entire, everything from the, you know, the biblical Israelites to now, it's,
Yeah,
you know, all this, the great energies have always been seeking home, seeking a place to call home, you know,
yeah.
is a place back. It's a return. It's a return, basically.
It might be a return. It might be a venturing onwards. It has shades of them both.
Like the Odyssey
But
and stuff. It's like, it's home is this concept that's in our heart since we're born, and we're forever looking for it, you know, philosophical
right,
concept. Yeah.
right. I'm starting to see life unfold in a number of different stages. So
Yeah.
there's a stage where it's like, you know, I just want to show up and get the women. Just want to get the women. I want to make amends for all the girls that I didn't sleep with while I was at school and when I went traveling, and I need to make up the numbers for what I missed in the past. And there comes a point where you realize in the middle of your adulthood where it's like, yeah, okay, I've had my numbers, I've got my flags, I've got 3 prom dates now. I'm good with that. And the question then becomes, and I see so many of our Amorati in this, the question then becomes, it's not about the quantity of women or the abundance of women, it's about the depth of experience. Like, I want to know what's the highest high or the lowest low, or what's the deep.
Yeah.
You know, I want to see into the deep with women and know everything that's possible. And I want to see into the deep with life and I want to know everything that's possible. And it's like, well, the next phase is something like, well, you can do that forever. You can be a constant seeker. But at one point it's like, fuck, I racked up all these tremendous experiences. Mm-hmm. The next task, or there's a realization one day, and I had this as a adding up of successive realizations where all of a sudden it's like, well, I had all these experiences. I kind of know I can join the dots of my crazy life's path. It all has a real coherence. I'm in the right place with the right gift, with the right people listening to me, with a sense of what's going on. I feel primed to give something back. And now the arduous job is, okay, great, I found my purpose, to call it a word. I don't have to look for the meaning of my life. I have it, which is the most relieving thing. But the arduous thing about this new phase is, okay, how do I describe the ineffable things that I experienced and now put them in a way that can be transmitted to the next people?
And
so it's
and a further question is, why? Why do we have that desire to package this up and hand it down or hand it over? Why?
Let me get to that one in a few minutes, because that's just maybe too big a thing to do off. But there is that. Well, do you agree in your own life? It's like, okay, you went out, you traveled the world, you had some amazing, I think, revolutionary, brain twisting, self kind of destroying and remaking experiences, particularly with women, but with beauty in other forms as well. And then it's like, well, I feel this thing inside of me that's like, I need to encapsulate that which I've seen and turn it into some kind of artifact, or turn it into something specific that I can give. And I think the why is to change culture, or to change something about the world as it is. Because after you see, well, after I've seen the places that I've seen, I look at a lot of my friends and brothers, a lot of relationships that surround me, and it's like, I mean, a lot of people are not experiencing those kinds of highs, and it's like, if only they did.
If only they could see it, yeah. Exactly what it is. And, you know, like, realistically, you're ministering, you're administering to your young self. Realistically, what you're going out to find. And when you find this treasure and you find this possibilities and potential, you want to take that in your hands and hand it to your young self. That's because you didn't have it. And that's not fair. It's real, but it feels unfair. So you want to hand it to your young self. And by proxy, you hand it to others, I think, you know, something like that. The more I think about our thought process and our journey, you know, you go back to the beginning of Western philosophy with Plato and his allegory of the caves, you know, which is we're all approximating what is real. We only see shadows on the wall flickering. And if we could turn around, we'd see the real thing, but we're chained to this. We can't. And the idea is that, you know, there is, like you said, we are seeking, I want to get girls. I want to get this experience in my life because I didn't have it. And I want to fight for this. And that's a driving force for a lot of men. I want to get girls. And when you've had that, when you've turned some corner, or you've done something, you're going to, wait a minute. I want to know what is the essence of what I was seeking, as opposed to the specific volume of girls. What is the essence that I was seeking in this journey of the, you know, and then you realize it's the feminine spirit, the feminine life-giving energy that you've been craving since you were young, and you migrate toward, you want it. And then if you continue that journey, which anybody's listening to this podcast is on this journey, you go into further into the form of the thing, or the form is here, and the real thing is out there that you're trying to find, and you can never attain it. You know, so I really believe in this. Like you said, Jordan, you get a high, and then you cycle back around, maybe slightly more advanced and more knowledgeable than you were, but then you get another high way over here, and then you cycle back to here again, and but you're on a constant movement forward. And as you learn things, as you experience things, as you travel, as you get a girlfriend, as you break up, you know, as you have a child, these things you start to get in Jordan Peterson's words, the maps of meaning of life. It's the maps of meaning, you know, and meaning is the number one. Meaning is a word that underlines everything that we're trying to understand, because it's devoid of meaning. And this modern secular age is saying the universe is devoid of meaning. It's uncaring, it's cold, it's brutish, it's destructive. It will, you know, we live for a moment, and in a synapse of moment, and then we crash back down into the dust where we came from, and it means nothing. None of it meant anything. You could try, you know, filthy lucre, you can try businesses, you can try this lifestyle, and you know, when at the end of it, there's no meaning. So when we're approaching on, and it's the age-old question since the beginning of Western philosophy, for sure, is what is the meaning of it all? You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's the whole thing. I mean, what's the meaning of this podcast? I don't know.
we ought to think of one quickly and write that in the show notes. Solve a lot of problems.
So imagine, Jordan, if you were doing this podcast for your young 19-year-old self, what would you say? That's incredible when you think about it. What would you say to that guy? Because I want you to get something cool. Right?
Well, I've got two questions based on what you said. Two big philosophical threads, I think, which is take up the next hour or two at least, potentially. One is on the topic of meaning. Let's come back to that later. Like, is everything inherently meaningless anyway? Like, I've got a big question mark on that, because I think the opposite is equally valid. But the first thing is you saying that this path is like, okay, so you went deeper and deeper and deeper into your personal journey, and you saw into the deep. I'm just going to absolutely borrow that phrase from the Gilgamesh epic and say that again and again. You saw into the deep. It's like you had a revelation of the entire point of life and what is there to be felt. And then you came back and you want to present that to who? To your younger self. Why? So that your younger self can maybe miss out on a lot of the suffering that you had along the way, and ease his way into those kinds of experiences for himself to find inherent meaning. But is it true that all people are turning around to give their wisdom to their younger selves? Like, is this a psychological thing that you've read about? Is this kind of some very old bit of philosophy? Is it true for everyone, or is it true only for a certain kind of seeker, or for you, or for me?
My quick jumping ahead of my mind, my thought process answer is, it is only for a few. Many are called, but few are chosen, you know? And I really do think that there's only a few that will have that burning desire. Most of us are existers. We exist. We react to life. And then we wonder, you know, we get old and we've got some disease and we're decrepit, and we wonder what the heck just happened. And there's a very few who step out of the, you know, it's Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. It's you know, the leaves are not flipped over there.
Yeah.
You know, there's you know, or in the Bible, it's, you know, it's wide as the path, you know, everybody's going down the wide path and the trodden path, but the path that's the path, the road's not taken. That is the one that there's only a few. And those are the, like, for lack of understanding of the words, are the seekers, are the treasure hunters, are the mystics, are the ones who have this burning desire to nurture their young self, to feed and nurture and look in the eyes of the young self and say, it's going to be okay. And that's very few, you know, very few. That's why, you know, ours Amorata is very boutique. It's like a lot of guys look at our stuff, go, I don't know, what am I do with that? but the ones who really get it, I mean, they get a tattoo on them, Jordan. You know, there's like 30 or 40 guys have a tattoo like this, not because they're followers of us, but because they really felt that there was something meaningful, maybe for the first time in their life, that they can belong to something that is trying to have this conversation of this path not taken, you know?
So I get really clearly that the amount of people who are actually going to take that journey, I talk about it like a soul journey, because it's stepping out of the kind of conventional programming of the social self and looking for something deeper than the surface. It's very clear that only a few are called to do that journey, but the motivation of it, like to come back after that journey and talk about it, or produce it as a kind of artifact, or a book, or an album, or a series of paintings, or a movie, like the way, or a business, the way people will take the gold or the treasure that they find and then turn around and try and give it back. Is it necessarily going back to the younger self?
Well,
That's what I wonder.
That's my thinking, is it going back to the younger self? Maybe it's going to others in a more direct way. But you know, the idea of beauty, which is what we're all about, like seeking beauty in relationships and in our hearts and in our daily life. We want beauty. We want a day that's filled with beauty. We want a relationship that's filled with beauty. We want to look in the eyes of our beloved and we sense beauty in our heart, and we can, you know, click our heels together and skip down the street because we've seen beauty in this non-beauty world, you know? So the idea is that, you know, and we talked about the sublime earlier. This is my little tangent here. I'm going off on a side tangent. And the sublime, you know, has a connotation of something that it is overwhelming. And that comes from Edmund Burke, and it comes from Immanuel Kant, and the third Earl of Shaftesbury, you know, in the last few hundred years, they said the sublime is like beauty, but it's more something that's like the Grand Canyon that overwhelms you and like I can't handle it, right? Or a thunderstorm, right? And I don't agree with these guys. They're great philosophers, and I think the sublime is something more. And I'm exploring this a little bit, and they may be right, and I could be wrong, of course. And they probably are, but the idea that the sublime is something that touches us, that everyone is drawn to. And you know, the underlying concept here is that I don't care what religion background you are, what culture background you are, what race background you are. If you have a human shape, you know, you're humanoid, right? All are drawn to beauty. That's our common denominator. So the staunch atheist who thinks there's no God and is actually vile against any kind of concept of God and attacking is, you know, he has got this set of beliefs. And then you have a Buddhist or a Christian, or, you know, over here, or a different thing with who is caught up in their religion, believes in it with all their heart and soul, absolutely sincere as this staunch atheist. And they're at loggerheads, and they are antagonistic and violent against each other, even, right? Fundamentalists, for instance. But the common denominator of all these people who have even an inkling, even the tiniest seed in their soul and heart of wanting to understand their path, because some people don't. They just like exist and, you know, do things and die. Anybody who has this, the staunch atheist, the staunch Buddhist, the staunch Christian, the staunch, they all are drawn towards beauty and the sublime, which is the transcendent to me. It's like they're all drawn. They all have this, they all tear up. They get a little tear in their eye. It's something that moves them. What, you know, music moves people. We talk about how music moves, and no one can describe scientifically how music moves, but it does move. It's here and it moves to there, and it takes us on this sublime journey, you know, and the atheist is caught up in it. The Christian is caught up in it. It doesn't matter the religion, the Gaia lover, you know, earth person is caught up in it. So that's how I try and understand the sublime, Jordan, and the journey we're on and what we're trying to experience. And, you know, you talked about, you know, serving or ministering to your young self. I don't know how else to put it. What else? What other motivation do we have? Like, are we altruistic? We want to help the human race. I don't know about that. You know, maybe it's true, but why? You know, that's kind of the questions that we sit in.
I think that's got to vary on a case by case basis. I don't have any examples come to mind at the moment, but to be motivated to become someone for the benefit of a sibling who didn't have the opportunity to, who grew up with some kind of
Right.
illness or disabled, perhaps, then a sibling might go out into the world to find some way of serving that.
Well, it's
Through
ancient because I
absolute
mean,
compassion.
you know, you talk about Plato and Aristotle and these ancient Greeks from 600 BC, and they would go to the agora in ancient Greece, which was the open place where young men would gather and they would tell them stuff. So they had a motivation to go into the agora, which is, you know, the public space, and share their ideas with young men who were men at the time, of course, because it was only men like involved in that, who were curious about learning these things too. And there was a motivation for them to go and share. So it's something ancient in us. It's something fundamental in us. You know,
So
what it is, I don't know.
you're supposing that the great Greek philosophers from 2,500 years ago had the same motivation of, when I was a teenager, I was so
No
stupid. My
question.
teacher would deride me. I couldn't logically come to any kind of conclusions and still remain without a red face in front of my school friends. And so I set upon a quest.
Yeah, I think motivation is something that's been consistent through the history of mankind. And you know, like we're motivated to get a good pair of shoes that serve us through all of history. It's simple, right? No billionaire can have a better pair of shoes than an average guy, right? Or food. I mean, you can only eat so much food in a day. So we can't have an abundance of food and it serves us better than a guy who's like, you know. So the motivation, I think, from the ancients in all cultures to us is the same, which is and my thesis is that we're fundamentally drawn toward beauty. That's that's a fundamental motive, just like food and water and energy and air, and which are, you know, super basic. We need air and water and food. But beyond that, I think beauty is just the next thing. We're drawn towards, you know, a beautiful experience, beautiful community, a beautiful, meaningful, whatever that meaning is. We go back to the word, journey through life. So I'm fascinated by it.
Okay. So I get that beauty as being this, and the way I conceive of it is you're saying now beauty is this peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Beauty in the way that I think you're talking about it, and I also in these conversations, is this self-transcendent layer, which is
Well, I think beauty's lower, Jordan, in Maslow's hierarchy of need. Yeah. I think it, you know, like, you know, we start with, you know, air, water, food, shelter. Shelter's even before food, I think, right? Is a need, is a fundamental need to survive. Food, and then community, gathering, belonging, validation. All that, you start to get higher into these more abstract concepts because you got the basics done. And I think beauty's lower in there somewhere. It has to be.
So yeah, then I get curious, what kind of beauty are you talking about? I remember that there's the word aesthetic somewhere, and I think it's relatively high, but not quite at the peak. There is an aesthetic need that kind of feng shui, everything's in its right place and it's pleasing to the eye and doesn't have a
Harmony, yeah.
stench and so on. Yeah. So when you're using the word beauty, how often are you talking about this need for aesthetic harmony versus this, okay, I felt something that was the frisson, the
Yeah,
goosebumps,
I'm talking about
which
the
is
latter.
yeah, exactly, because it's a very different
Yeah.
beast of beauty that makes you kind of stop and can transform a life
Yeah.
because it's so fundamentally different than good bit of feng shui. No matter how good the interior decor
Yeah.
is,
I mean,
it's yeah.
it doesn't matter about the harmony and, you know, because a lot of beauty is disharmonic. It is asymmetrical. You know, there's something in the ragged. The Japanese even have a word for it. I can't remember what it is, which is, and it's like a broken teapot. The cracked teapot has a beauty that a whole one does not have, you know? So there's something else there. There's something. And so when I'm talking about beauty, I'm talking definitely about the sense that we're connecting to something larger than ourselves, you know, like something more impotent or more potent than our small, tiny experience. It's not harmony, and it's not kitsch. It's not pleasing landscapes. That's, you know, that's everywhere. You know, that's like looking at a hot girl. That's pleasing to me. That's beauty. But there's something else. We're looking for that cracked element of that hot girl. That makes it really stand out and unique. And this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. What I'm trying to understand. That's a lower level. So when I talk beauty on that level, I'm trying to reclaim the word into something else than what we think it is, which is appearances. It's not appearances. That's an aspect of it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear you say a little bit more about this. I think it's clear to some readers, viewers, but maybe not to others. What is it about beauty? What is it about this kind of broken or cracked part of a woman, for example, that is beauty on a very different layer?
Because now we can relate to it on the brokenness and the cracked part of our own selves, which we all have. If we look at, you know, for instance, I use it as an example, Instagram, everything is pristine, aligned, perfectly shot, perfectly focused, perfectly colored, perfectly arranged. And we look to that and we think, well, I can't attain this because I'm just, you know, I have this dumpy energy, or I'm not on every day. I'm not in Maslow's peak experience every single day. Sometimes I'm scratching my ass and don't know what's going on, you know, like I'm confused and like, I don't feel so good. So, but all of that, like, so that's an appearance-based energy as opposed to the touching your soul and your heart, like a piece of music would do, or poetry, or a sunset, or like I said, the lips of and face of your beloved coming towards you. That breaks the heart of a man, you know, it breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of spirit, I think, that is very low on a necessary net need right after belonging. Once we're included, we belong, we're in community. The next level, I'm thinking, is this sense that we are caught up in something larger than this basic experience. Caught up in something, you know? We want to feel the sense of the beloved. We want to feel adored. We want to feel that someone cares about us, you know? And it's, how many men have we ministered over these years, Jordan, who don't have the sense that anybody cares about them? You know, think about that, you know? There's nobody on earth that if they were sick or hurt or sad or quiet would come and say, you know, I hear you, I see you. They don't have that. And they're starved for it in this modern age, you know? And that transcends all religions, all belief systems. It's just this fundamental need that's lower level. In fact, I think it's lower level than religion on the hierarchy of needs, or it is that fundamental. It's this lower level that is absolutely necessary for the heart of men and women to feel like they've lived some kind of a life or something. I don't know. I'm just spouting, but
when I trace this back to what I shared right at the beginning of the episode about having this first, what I call transcendent moment with a woman, it was very much based on me being one of the possibly the only people around who could see the kind of ignored young girl who was a bit of a runaway in her and had all these talents, but didn't quite find her place anywhere. So there was a tiny little bit of misfit about her, which corresponded to the one in me. And the iconic moment of, you know, the great heart opening spectacle, you know, where the heavens opened and the thunder came down and the lights got changed. It was a case of her seeing the most broken parts in me as well, like the things that I didn't even have to tell her really about my vulnerability, but she would say, I see this in you, and I see this in you, and this is all beauty. And she rattled off a list of about 30 different things that she saw. And I'm like, each one of them is like a dagger going in, because it's like, that's true, that's true, that's true. Oh my God, like these are secrets that I've always known about myself that I've never been able to formulate into language. But you're there looking at me, speaking these things, like strumming my pain with your fingers, to quote a lyric. You can see the whole package, and it's just like, how can two people resonate and see each other in each other and articulate, but it's fully broken? And I think that's why I went into this spiral of not knowing if that was a transcendent experience. Like, did we see something that was above and beyond, or did it touch rock bottom? That was my big kind of inner debate for a long, long time, to try and discern, was it a rock bottom experience, or was it a kind of heavenly experience? And I think in truth, it was both. They can both exist together. And they kind of both do. If you go down into the depths of the dark, like the worst parts of humanity, or you see the worst parts, something I much more commonly do in my work is I see the worst parts of man or woman's psyche, like the most dastardly things that they ever think, or the most shameful, horrific places that they ever feel. I go there and coax out some of the words and some of the feelings, and it's the lowest low, but within that lowest low is the high. It's an all at once kind of confronting affair from all angles. It feels cataclysmic. It's like the world's going to end if this pain gets any more. It's going to break my entire body in half. It's kind of the felt sense of actually feeling that. But it does, I think, dovetail into what you're saying as that necessary thing, because unless you've had another person see you and not just accept you, but absolutely love you in those broken places, I don't think a human being can ever feel whole.
This is what's missing.
And that's why so many of us are on this kind of self-development treadmill, because it's like they never got down to scratch the itch deep enough. And the scratching of the itch is something that you cannot do alone. I firmly believe that this is kind of a core constituting part of my work and my outlook. This is why I'm not so gung-ho about ayahuasca. This big fashionable thing at the moment. Go and do your ayahuasca. And I get the adventure's cool, right? You have to fly out to some jungle, and there's all the kind of songs and the pomp and the tradition behind it. And that's cool. And then you take your cup, and there's the whole ceremony. You go down into the depths, and I know that it is hugely transformative and healing for a lot of people, because it can ease open little gates and little portals within the heart. You forgive a kind of person you never forgave before, and so on. And that eases free, and that allows something to happen in the real world afterwards. But that point of belonging, it's not belonging as in, come around to our house and we'll make you tea and you can join the kind of parish,
right?
That you're talking about, the lower level. But there's a fundamental belonging, which is, it's I think only when you truly fall in love or have a relationship with another person who goes into those places, that you feel it. And you can't get that on ayahuasca, because no matter how deep your insight, you're in the bottom of your own crevice yourself, alone. And you might feel intimate with a shaman's song, but it's not really for you. It's not in the shape of an actual person who wants to live their life to you, who wants to be with you in these places.
Interesting. Exactly. Like the thing that appeals to me, the type of girls that are attracted to me are the broken ones. Like, because it appeals to my misfit youth, my delinquent youth, my lost and insecure sensibility, my broken porcelain energy that I've always felt, and so I'm drawn to the underdogs. I'm drawn to the Mary Magdalenes of the world, who are contrite and wanting to have a better experience and never got that chance, So Yeah, I mean, we seek it in all kinds of ways. We seek to try and become whole by ayahuasca, by self-development. Like you said, the treadmill of self-development. Like self-help is the biggest industry of it's the largest genre of books out there after romance novels. you know, and it's like self-help is this watchword of today. It's our watchword. It's like self-help. And everything the bestsellers are self-help. And then if they're not a bestseller about self-help, there's bestseller on memoir, which is how I self-helped myself and look at me, what I did, So it's like, we're missing something fundamental, and there's a brokenness in the West for sure, which is the only thing I know. When I talk about, philosophy and culture and stuff, I only have the Western eyes, so that could be completely different in different parts of the world, but I don't have experience with it. So, I think there's going back to what I said before, there's such a draw in us to experience something that is the other, the concept of the other experience, the other energy, the other part of ourselves that we never get to touch. Most people, and I would say most, not a portion, most people will never have this calling to try and understand something deeper, a deeper meaning, the maps of meaning. But the few who are drawn to the Ars Amorata and the Amorati and the work we're doing, the men and women are just caught up, and they're transfixed by the magical, mystical quality of a different way of looking at life. And it's incredible to me.
Cycling back a little bit, I've got some healthy sporting skepticism on this notion that we try and encapsulate the things that we found in some kind of work so that we can hand it back to our former selves. I'm going to take that one away and look at it from a few different angles, and maybe come back with a stronger position in a few months. But I'm not sure that that's the complete and only answer. I think there's a lot more.
What would your impulse answer be then, Jordan? Like, why are we motivated? Why are you motivated to, for instance, to do this podcast? What's your motivation? I'm very curious, because I want to know too.
Yeah, because we started off and I'm saying, well, what I'm doing lately is I'm kind of stewing and I'm getting into this whole organization and I'm growing in ways and practicing new things, which is a lot of work. Why?
Yeah, why?
Why am I not on Netflix, right?
Yeah. Why are you not sitting around and watching TV?
Why do this? I don't feel a connection with going back to my past and creating something to give to that person from the past. Mm-hmm. It's almost like he was one complicated guy. It would take a lot of untangling to go back and help him out. If I was to go back 15 years, I don't know if I'd have the patience, if ever. But I cannot also say, like, I'm just burning for this burden of this oppressed population in the world, and everything that I do is for the women, or for this nation, or for that nation, or for those people, or the people that suffer with this. I don't have a
savior complex
thing. No,
neither do I. We don't have the savior complex. So what is it? That's interesting.
Yeah, I know that I want to consolidate the things that I've seen and felt into something that can be somehow complete and expressed. Like the experiences that I've had and the perspectives that I gained along the way have to be catalogued. They have to be recorded. It has to be given. I revel in it when someone gets it. Like if I write a big, long, rambling post and it kind of stretches me even to put those things into word, and it goes out, and then someone said, I get it. Like, this is right on. I'm shaking because I read your post and I don't know what to do, but I'm excited. So reached out. The fact that a few people do that is like, okay, perfect. You know, that's enough. I know that I'm not screaming into a void.
Why does that fulfill you, Jordan? Because you could learn these experiences. You could have these mystical experiences and have this understanding, learning, and become whole and complete in yourself, and not share it.
Communitas.
Okay.
Communitas. Okay, so this is the word from a book called Stealing Fire, which I recommend all around. Anyone who's interested in the transcendent. Stealing Fire is how can we use these psycho-spiritual technologies and different kind of hallucinogenic experiences or chanting or any of the things that people do to get high and transcend the egoic mind. How can we use these technologies in a way to transform ourselves and our culture and our world? Great book. And he talks in that,
Communitas.
and he talks about communitas, which is a shared ecstasy, which is I had ecstasy when I was alone. I shared ecstasy when it was with a woman. Some of my greatest adult moments are from a shared ecstasy we had in a group, particularly in a workshop, because when everyone is so rawly authentic, they're like, listen, I've traveled the world, I spent all this money to come into this world, I didn't give a fuck, the mass are coming on, I'm gonna lay it all on the table. When people are that raw with each other, they're very transcendent moments happen. And when I look at some of the participants we've had over the years in the eye, and it's like, oh, you went to a place in our workshop, and I'll never forget that there's this glint of mischief made that we had with each other. There's no taking those experiences away. We had something called Communitas, which is you went beyond the rational limits of who you think you are, me too, and we created something kind of artful in that moment. And and you and I have that forever. Like it's written in the kind of etheric records between us. It's never going to go away. And I think there's a longing for this communitas to write or to read or to do a speech where I know that there's other people in the audience, might just be 2 or 3, but they're literally with me. Tennis match came to mind. You know, these kind of 5th set tiebreak, 2018. You've got the 2 best. You've got like Federer and Djokovic. They're just toe to toe, boom, 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 boom. There's not a gap in consciousness between the 2 people. I'm speaking or he's speaking. I'm receiving, feeling. The 2 people are in this kind of vibration, and it's communitas. We came into a shared ecstatic moment together, and when that happened, that, to close the loop, is inherent and full meaning of life in the moment, being felt, being lived.
So that's low level in the hierarchy of needs, because Jordan, like you could imagine you shared your experiences, etc., and it was given to others and they received it, but you never had the reciprocity of that shared mindset and that shared collusion, the shared thing. And you just gave it and they said, thanks, Jordan, and wandered off into the wilderness, right? Then you received nothing in return. And it doesn't mean that you are selfishly, well, I don't know, somebody could philosophically, semantically say, well, yeah, well, it is selfish, but it's like there's something in there that you are nurtured as well because of the shared experience, the shared mindset, like you said, the melding of minds. And you can see the sparkle in that guy's eye or that woman's eye. And you see that we are doing, this is something that's co-created between us that is independent of us, but encompassing us, you know? So there's something that I'm getting and you're getting, even though I initiated, I brought this forward and I started shared, and I could see your eyes light up and my eyes light up in response. And if you didn't have that, it was just handed and they wandered off metaphorically. You're not nurtured. There's something in you that isn't nurtured. Something that is you isn't resolved. You didn't come to the home note in the musicality of life. You know, you didn't do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. And
it's like you put 10 years into the Alabaster Girl, and you're in some bookshop doing a signing, and someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, hello, Mr. Perrion, would you sign my book?" Yes, I rated this book 5 stars on Amazon, and I really wanted to know on page 276, was this Ukrainian woman from Odessa or from Kiev? And when you approach a girl, do you lift your head? Do you actually wink?
Yeah, do I
And if so, how do you do the wink? like,
how
there's
do
no
how do you
communicate.
sub-communicate? Exactly.
You've got, when someone says that to you, you've got like authority and status and whatever in their minds, because you wrote this thing that
Yeah.
they so easily want to grab. But I know in my work, if I put something out and someone comes up to me and they tell me a story and it's like, I read your book and then this happened and said this thing to this girl and then it changed my life. It doesn't even matter what the story is, but their kind of heart flings open at the time. And I've sat with alumni and they've told me stories and I get the tear down the eye, you know, like,
Yeah.
shit, like you took that thing, like you took that weird story I
That
took of
offhand comment I did, and it meant so much to you.
some horrific alleyway I walked down in my own personal life, and I came back and I shared that kind of horrible story, and you took that and turned it around and explored it to the nth degree, and you had this breakthrough, and now you're kind of married, and you had this experience that just changed your entire life.
Yeah.
When someone tells me that story with the heart vibrating, I cannot help but kind of laugh and cry at the same time. It's and I think that's the communitas. It's like I put my gift out into the world.
Interesting. Yeah.
You fully got my vibration, and you fully have the vibration I put out in you, and you lived it, and you came back and you told me so, and now I've got I've got the gift. Like I think this is the miracle of purpose. You know, you've spoken many times with these great philosophers who put their stuff into a life's work and they weren't even recognized until after they were dead. Or they get to the age of 95 and said, wrote all these great pieces, but for what? It was a total failure. Maybe they never, you know, for all of this philosophizing, maybe they never had a moment of that communitas, which is the student comes up to you and says, I get everything you're saying. Like you've literally put into words and it's changed. I don't know. Life has meaning. That's the kind of words we come back to. Life all of a sudden had meaning because I felt it in your words, and then it related to that, and then I experienced that, and two people get uplifted.
For me, the thing that fascinates me the most is motivation. I've talked about this before. Motivation. What motivates us? You know, why did I spend 10 years writing this book? I could just contain the experience and the learnings and live a life of abundance and joy. Why did I don't know. I don't know the motivation. You know, it's like, and I'll have guys, like you said, Jordan, like an offhand comment or something. There's high points to me in my book that I think, wow, that really captures something there that I like. And there's other things that were just, that's cool too. And then I'll get a message from a guy on some of these throwaway, I shouldn't say that, but just kind of these not so peak things that, you know, concepts. And I say, I read this paragraph and this passage in your book, and it really, and it really meant, it broke my heart. I'm thinking, really, that compared to, so you just don't know what, you just don't know what's going to touch the heart of somebody or, you know, affect somebody. And, but the motivation, why? I'm curious myself. I want to know from cradle to grave, why did I spend 10 years writing this book on my own, you know?
Yeah, this is what I wonder. Out of everything that I've just been saying about Communitas, I feel this has been revelatory because it's like you asked me that question. I'm like, that really feels it. Like I had a not knowing and now I've got more clarity. Does what I've been sharing resonate with you, or is your motivation, does it have a different form or a different essence to it? Yeah. Like the sense of Communitas is...
Well, no question, Jordan. Like I want to feel bound up in something. I want to feel included in a concept that isn't just eating and banging and, you know, eating, being birthed and dying. There's something I want to know. And so for me, it's sitting in breaking bread, you know, in communion with others. That's why, you know, this is the Amorata conference weekend. We don't get to do that in person, but you and I adore and love the concept of men and women coming from around the world and sitting in fellowship. We're drawn to that in a common denominator, common goal, common energy. And I think the majority of the world is starved for that. We've got drinking buddies, and we've got, you know, girls that, you know, like kind of hang out with each other. but we're missing something. We're missing the sense of devotion to congregation of some kind.
So when you're breaking bread with brothers and sisters, and it's just you're breaking bread in the best possible way, like everything's going swimmingly around you, and it's like, this is the essence of good bread breaking for me. Like, this is everything that I've wanted this year. What's happening in that scene?
What comes to mind, you know, you think of King Henry VIII and the cliche image of this corpulent, robust gentleman. He's got the big turkey leg like this, and he's surrounded by minstrels and women and dwarves and, you know, and or Nero, you know, like or Caligula, and just like this sense of like packing all this energies onto your life. Or in modern age, Dan Bilzerian, you know, this guy is Instagram guy. He's got all these hot models around him, or, you know,
right.
It's age old. There's nothing new under the sun. So there's something in us that wants to gather with fellow like-minded people. I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said Henry VIII and Nero, because it's not like this is not. We talked about austerity on the last, and the beauty about becoming close with poverty, right? This is not some peasants breaking bread.
Yeah, not asceticism where we're in silence.
You're Henry VIII, like the most badass king of all British history,
right.
Like one of the most badass kings of all world history.
The image is fantastic, you got to admit. It's complete overabundance, it's complete decadence, it's complete incredible.
So to something about like a motivation, like to sit in the middle of that kind of scene with all your friends around, with women around, just doing that, like eating, drinking, shouting, laughing.
I think we want to have that sense of joy and abundance and possibility and options. There's options there. King Henry VIII has a sense of options. There's 30 women here. There's an option. Most guys sit here in their solitude and their complaint and their victimhood, and there's no option. They don't have option to have the abundance of social energy. And, you know, and when guys come to Amorata Experience or come to you for the coaching we do, they're looking for that. How can I have a sense of abundance? And I don't mean abundance of women necessarily, but abundance of adoration, abundance of women who think who like you as a person, who think you are a quality experience that they've experienced, or something like that. You know, there's a sense of they want to take care of you. They believe in you. They believe in what you're trying to create, what you're trying to do, and they're on your side. And you feel that. You feel that you got this army of energetic, even though they're married off to other people and stuff like that, they still adore you and want and care for you and want you to feel moving forward in life. That's the sense of abundance I'm talking about. Incredible.
So maybe this is a bit of a blunt question, but does this mean that your motivation for spending 10 years to write the Alabaster Girl and get the wording down, because it's so meticulously the flow and the craftsmanship of the words, 10 years to write that book, the chief motivation of that was so you could Henry VIII it for the rest of your days?
No, because I like being in solitude, you know, like I kind of like this isolation. I like contemplation, looking out the window, scratching myself, running around naked in my apartment. I like it. I really like the sense of I'm bound and I have nothing to do but sit in my own stew, my own thoughts. I have only my own thoughts, and whatever creates out of that or the reading I'm doing, to me, I just adore it. I love this concept of isolation. That's why I self-isolated. The first episode of this, me going to Florence, before the world is isolated, I went there and I hid for a month. I did it a year ago in Bamaveke, which is the seaside of the Black Sea. And I did that before when I went to Nicaragua for months to work on my book, The Alabaster Girl. So there's something in me that really likes that solitude, that quiet. I only have a communion with me and God. There's nothing else. Communion with my own thoughts, my own insecurities, etc. Right? So the King
Yeah.
Henry VIII thing, yeah, you know, it's not my motivation at all. Not even close. And so it's not
Right.
because I want that, you know?
Right. Unbound, I think, was interesting word that I picked up on that. Like to be absolutely alone with your thoughts in isolation, unbound.
Yeah, I could spend the
Like,
rest of my life like that.
yeah.
If I'm progressing, if I'm learning, if I'm in a learning mode, if I'm just, you know, watching Netflix and sitting around scratching myself, right? No, or navel gazing and blaming myself and thinking I'm isolated and alone and I suck and I'm lonely, right? I'm never lonely. I am never lonely. I went to, like, if I go away for a month and I sit in a hotel room in Florence, and the first episode here, when you called me like 3 or 4 weeks into it, I had my curtains closed on my hotel. I had the heat cranked. I sat in my underwear. I put a thing on the door, don't disturb me, don't clean my room. And every 3 days I would let the maid come in for half an hour and clean up. And I had, you know, food delivered to my room. So I didn't leave. I just sat there. I would take a nap. I'd go pace the floor back and forth. I'd take a shower. I'd go sit on the toilet. I'd go stare at my computer, no internet, stare at my work, take my notebooks, millions of notes and notebooks. And I would repeat it every day. And those days, like this isolation to me right now, flew by because I'm sitting in contemplation. So if you're doing that and you're trying to understand and learn incrementally a little bit more each day, you're full of abundance. I had the sense of pure abundance and full sense of social fulfillment was enough, right? But if you're not, and you're spinning your wheels and you're lonely and you're playing video games all day and you're watching Netflix and you're just consuming and you're not gaining something, then that's when it's empty and devoid of meaning.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh?
We come back to the word meaning again.
Yeah, because when we talk about anything, Jordan, what is the meaning of the Alabaster Girl? Why did I write? What's the meaning of why I wrote it? Why are you caught up in these beautiful things you're writing? You're writing some incredible articles and stuff, which we need to capture, you know, and share with the world even more than it is. You're involved in this. You really put a lot of thought and effort in and technological effort into trying to create the best experience you can. You're an audiophile, so you want the audio of this podcast to be pristine. Me, I'm not. I'm like, let's get it out there. And if it's muffled or there's a fan in the background, well, I'm not aware of these things, but you are. You're something that motivates you, excites you to create something like this. So it's meaning. What, you know, and we go back to meaning. What is the meaning of why we're doing any of this? Because we could learn and just hold it tight. But there's something in us that recognizes that we're not fully complete in that learning if we don't take the abundance of the gift we're given and share it to others. Because it's a gift. It's nothing. You're not a cool guy and I'm not a cool guy. We're not great. We don't come up with these concepts. It's given to us. We receive it, you know, like from the muses, you know, from the ancient Greek muses. We receive something from the universe, from God, that we take in our hands and we say, this has helped me so much. And we hand it on. We pass it on. The eternal fire. We take the eternal fire and we want to pass it on from the slopes of Parnassus, you know, down to the others. Incredible.
Yeah. So why not die with the eternal fire in your hands? Like,
exactly.
if everything is meaningless, why this?
That's a good question.
It's very intrinsic, and we're trying to unpack it and get some answers in this podcast, right? But it comes down. And then it stops, and that's why I'm saying, Zan, for the last 5 or 6 years, I had all these tremendous experiences and mind-bending insights, and that was my fire. And now I need to kind of put it into a way that the next person can
package it,
that does justice to it. So I could just spit. Guess this is what the podcast is a little bit. I could just spit this kind of undifferentiated mass of experience that befell me, and then not tidy it up for the next person, but there's a way that I want to mold that and produce that so that then gets passed on.
I'll tell you, Mike.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you, so why, why not die with the fire of the alabaster girl just in you? And why cycle over that book so many painstaking times so it took the form that it did? And I know that you've covered why you didn't want to do like a how-to kind of PDF many times, but why do the last pass, like just trying to suck every little last piece of rhythm and intonation and spirit into it? Why compress that gift and chisel away at it so much?
I think that because, Jordan, honestly, I think it's abstract or absent motivation, internal motivation. Let's extract that out. Why? I think that because I do believe in the transcendent. I do believe in something beyond our experience. I think that some are called from this abstraction, including you, as prophets. Like, and I mean that in a sense that you've been given a message to hand to others. Why and how, I don't know, but I really do believe in it. I think that you, independently, Jordan, Luke Collier, from what I know of you now, and from knowing you from 8 years ago, you came as this humble, student, hat in hand, into Ars Amorata, and it doesn't mean Ars Amorata has been your epiphany, your growth, because you've reached out to every avenue, you've traveled the world, you've seen some things, you went to all the mystics you could find in this world, and you've read and nonstop, and you've been called to hand a message to humanity. And I believe that. And what the message is, we don't have it fully formed. Do we think we're ready? No. Are you some kind of a guru? No, you're not a guru. You're not enlightened. You're not a saint. You're just a guy who you've been given some light. And I really think that, because I learned from you, and others read your stuff, or, you said that guys would message you and say, you've really affected my life in some way. So it is no longer your choice. I guess it's no longer your choice. You've been given something, you have to hand it on. And if you don't, then, it's just an internal failing. So there's a few, and you're one of them, that's been handed something independent of Ars Amorata, independent of me, independent of anything. You've been handed something that is meant to be passed on to others. And it's the same thing as the Greeks, like Homer thinking, I need something from the muse, I need something from above.
Yeah.
Your camera stopped again.
Yeah. We'll have to go on a little bit like this.
No problem. But yeah, that's the essence of it, Jordan. So you look at the prophets in the Bible, which is my frame of reference, because when I was a kid, I read the Bible, and they were reluctant. They were given a message and they said no, and they went the opposite direction, and they hid. They said, no, I'm not worthy. I have nothing to say. Well, you're called to do it. Well, I don't want to. They ran and hid. And God would seek them out and say, well, I gave you this message,
So you asked me right at the beginning, how am I doing? What have I been doing lately? So I've been doing this. I think because, you're saying these things about me, but I think it's the story of anybody who goes out in search of the deep.
That's correct. There's very few, but they're called. They're called. You better believe it. Yeah.
So once any of the men who are kind of following in our wake, doing their kind of own version of this journey that both of us have been on, they are going to amass more and more of these experiences of epiphany and of understanding and of total radical transformation. And then at some point, they're going to have enough of those experiences under the belt that a philosophy or a message or the green shoots of a something will start to emerge within them.
Mm-hmm.
And then their work shifts. It's like, well, why travel more? Why fall in love more? Why break my heart open more? Why go to the depths of the mystery and beyond more? I've got enough experiences now that my real task is to kind of form that into a message that is then ready to put out into the world.
Yeah.
And this phase I would call a kind, if the phase before is the seeker or the wanderer, the one who goes out in search of things, the next phase is the apprentice, which is, okay, I found many things. I went out seeking. I found many, many things. I know what I'd like to commit my life to. And now I actually have to learn a way of taking that stuff and putting it into a format that is going to achieve its purpose in the world. And so some of that format is, how can I express the unexpressible? Because if you've really seen into the deep, there's no way you can put that in language. It has to, as a writer or as a speaker, it has to seep through the lines on the page. It has to come through between the words, in the cadence, in the rhythm. But it also has to be done in a way that the culture at this moment in time can accept. And the culture right now is struggling with Marcus Aurelius. I know this because my book club told me it was boring, and they're glad that they finished it. That's not the way to package your wisdom in this day and age. There has to be a different way to get that message across and have the influence that is merited in the world. So this apprentice has got the dual task of decoding and putting language around the ineffable and the sublime, and then inserting it into the world in a way that will actually create a transformation, and you'll be judged. You know, did 30 people read your ebook and have a tear roll down the face, or did it really have a cultural, we talk about creating culture, a transformative effect on change in the cultural DNA, which whatever your kind of thing in life is, and I've just said, I don't know who I'm rooting for or vying for. I don't know my demographic that I'm, sword in the hand, defending with my life. But there certainly is a proportion of the people out there who are destined to resonate or enter into this communitas with what I'm trying to say. And I'm saying all this kind of presuming that it was very similar for you. Maybe you say in different words. And I'm saying that anyone else who's kind of on this path into soul is going to find some shit and then realize, damn, I have to deliver everything that I found back into the world. And this phase is agonizing because it's the new skills. Like, to write a book, 400 pages, you could do that in a few weeks, really, if you just went at it and didn't massage everything. But to really apprentice in a way of decoding your experience and putting it out there is really a wrestle. Yeah,
it's like in the words of the immortal Douglas Adams, like, let's explore the ineffable and see if we can't F it in some way. The ineffable, if we're going to F it somehow,
Yeah, F it.
F the ineffable. And I'm curious about this. And I would like the comments of this, because I don't know of any source or any writing that talks about motivation that isn't based on, religion or something, but motivation of, why would a Richard Dawkins be so motivated to write the books he wrote? Why is he so thrilled to share that message, his atheist message? Or why would I would like to know this, because absent religion, there's lots of motivation in religion for, proselytizing or converting people or sharing the good news, right? And that's abundant in religion, and you have a reason. But absent religion, you look at Feynman in science or Dawkins in atheism and this kind of stuff, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, they call the atheists. Absent that kind of religion-based morality or reasoning, what is fun? I would like to know, read or something, and if anybody has any comments on this, send a link to an article or a book or something, that what is the motivation of this incredible, why are we still motivated in this meaningless universe, this quote unquote meaningless universe? Why are we still motivated? Because I want to know, I would like to explore
Yeah.
this, and it fascinates me. Motivation is incredible. Why?
Yeah,
Why?
and it's to kind of triple bottom line this, the motivation is extremely intrinsic and ineffable. It's not a, well, if I just write this book, it's going to consolidate my career or contribute to my retirement fund or open up this. It's none of these kind of conventional, I'm going to write the book so that then I
Yeah.
have this status. Like none of that.
No.
It's literally a, the thing has to be said. It does not depend
Has
on
to be
some
spread. Yeah.
cause or effect
No. You look at,
thing that's
you know,
going to get you to a certain place.
one of the reasons and the impetus of starting this podcast with you was my association with Sir Roger Scruton, the philosopher of beauty, and
Yeah.
and then his untimely death. He got cancer, and within 4 or 5 months from the knowledge, he was fine. 4 or 5 months later, he's dead. And in his last, I saw him at Sunday Hill Farm, his farm, maybe a month before his death. I was there.
Yeah.
I visited him in England, and he's sitting frail with a hat on in the sun in his garden with tea and crumpets, you know, and like very English. And to sit in the fellowship of him and company of him, and his greatest motivation, he was sick. His greatest motivation was to finish the book that he's been writing and have it get out before he goes. He was motivated for that. And it wasn't because of status. It wasn't because of money. It wasn't because of but he really had this burden to finish this and get it out to the people before he goes. That's incredible. You know, it's not for valor or aggrandizement, or because he's frail and weak and sitting there, you know, failing. And he still had this burning desire to get that book. It's a book on Parsifal, you know, the Wagnerian concept of Parsifal, and he finished his book. Incredible.
So
Philosophical.
how do you reconcile just pausing while you don't know what you're doing on that side.
I'm just moving my tea around.
The tea.
It's empty, and I tried to get some more, but there's no more. So,
damn it!
I failed.
Sign we're almost up, I think, for today's episode.
The tea's over.
Can't talk if there's no more tea. I want to understand how you reconcile these two different elements. One, you're saying we live in a meaningless universe.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that there's a philosophy of that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the world's meaningless. I'm saying that is a huge preponderance of the thought process of modern philosophy and science and political thought and everything today is like we're devoid of meaning. You know, that comes from the last 200 years. Yeah. Okay.
So there is a void of meaning. Not saying that it yours. That's right. And beliefs from that.
There's thought of that. Yeah.
There is a sense of meaninglessness, not just a modernistic, scientistic kind of meaninglessness, but also going back to Ecclesiastes, which you quote often. There's kind of an inherent kind of spiritual and mystical, religious kind of meaninglessness, which is the root of many things. So there's a lot of meaninglessness, big topic, big things to kind of bring together. And then you talk about motivation, and that's where we've been for most of this episode. What is this driving force that has people move mountains, fight death, cut themselves off from the world to go into isolation to try and do or understand
go on an epic
or pass on?
Go on an epic and return, you know, the whole hero's journey. Why?
So reconciling that why, that whole journey with this greater meaninglessness, how do you
can't. That's the cutoff point there, Jordan, is like you look at, you know, Albert Camus and Sartre and, you know, existentialism and absurdism, which is this modern philosophy that there's no meaning. You know, Camus famously said, the only philosophical question that has any meaning is, should I commit suicide or not? That's it. You know, like, what's the point? And if there's no, and if there is a point, then why, if there's no point, then why not just do it? And if there is a point, then you keep living. And and it goes back to Ecclesiastes, and, you know, there's nothing new under the sun, and eat, drink, and be merry, and the whole thing. And
Yeah.
so I don't see a reconciliation between this absurd meaningless of the universe and meaning. And in other words, and I know people comment on this and say, well, the meaning is what you give it. Like, that's the modern thought, is that the universe is meaningless. And this is what Camus came up with. He said, you know, with the myth of Sisyphus, you know, Sisyphus is rolling the rock up the hill for 100 years, and he gets it to the top and it rolls back down, and he's condemned. He's bound to that task, the Sisyphean task of raising that rock to the top, and falls down. And in the end of the myth of Sisyphus, Camus said, one must assume that Sisyphus is ultimately happy in his task of never ending, you know, because he created meaning. This meaning is rolling the rock. So I don't know these things. These are beyond my ken, but I really do believe that, like, I am not of the camp that says that the earth or the universe is devoid of meaning. I don't believe it. I think there is meaning. I just don't know I just do not know that we've stumbled upon it, and we may never will. But the journey, the seeking of it, and I think that, honestly, I think the meaning of the universe is beauty. We're drawn to beauty. That's the common denominator. And what that means and how you describe it, I don't know. But I'm fascinated by it. I believe it. I believe I wrote the book, The Alabaster Girl, because there's some calling in me towards beauty. I want to feel a beautiful experience. I want to have, when I would write a sentence in The Alabaster Girl, it had to have, like, you could cut it down by 100 pages. It's if you just wanted to give the information out. But it extends, and it has a musicality to it, which people think, well, that's purple prose and it's overwritten and, you know, embroidered. It could be. But to me, that's something that I would want to read. I want to read a sentence that has musicality, that goes like this, that the rhythm and the sense of the poetry of the words of that sentence matches what the sentence is trying to say. So that it has two senses of meaning, the aesthetic meaning of the sentence itself, and the content, the information that is presented. And if we don't have that second sense, the aesthetic quality of meaning, we could bang a girl. But, you know, and we do that, and it's like, okay, that was good. But if you have the second sense and layered over top of it, which is a sense of the rhythmic musicality of the dance of a man and woman in the history of life, and you and this girl, and the sense of a beloved, then the banging element's there, but it's overlaid with this musicality of the sentence that goes like this and ends in, you know, it has a poetry to it. And the poetry of life is what we're all seeking and all desiring.
Yeah. Yeah. A friend of ours once told me, maybe if you're watching this, you might have a wry smile. I might be having a wry smile at your expense. He said, I'm going to break down the Amorata into an engineering model, and then I'm going to teach that. And I'm kind of laughing internally, like, good luck with that, because you might extract all the information, but it's quite interesting that if you were to make an engineering model of the entire Ars Amorata philosophy, everything that you cannot capture is what is most essential to capture. So then we're left with the invisible, amorphous, uncapturable. And maybe if you take out all the engineering, you can look more clearly at that, because that's the thing here. I think when I think about meaning, it's very obvious in a way. There's a few people have told me in the comments in YouTube, you should look up Buddhist meditation, and I'm not a master, but I've certainly experimented with a few different kinds of meditations, and there's a great duality in meditation between emptiness and fullness. And the emptiness is, if you just stop thinking and there's no thought, then there's nothing. There's nothing. There's no meaning. You're just in your experience. There's no interpretation. The mind is not doing anything. It's just, here is my body. Here is the wall. Here is the seat. Here are the blackbirds flying by in the morning. Here is you know, the whole universe unfolding and expanding, but it's just as it is completely devoid of meaning. But then the flip side of that is fullness. And it's like the thing that I talked about, being with the woman, and you open your heart more deeply than ever before, and you share your truth, and you speak more directly, and you put it all on the line. And she does as well. She puts herself on the line. You've got two people inherently like fighting for how you feel, expressing everything, living for today.
Yeah.
The truth is fully out there. And as I said, it's like, or you meet with the person who just absolutely opened up in your work. Like he read your book fully, or he participated fully in the workshop. Like he held nothing back, and I held nothing back. And we had that communitas, man and woman, man and the people he's serving. The communitas is kind of happening. In those moments, everything is drenched in meaning. It's like even the most insignificant things have to be as they are for this moment to exist. Everything is perfect. And I think like the man who lost his virginity and walks home the next morning, you know, he hasn't slept, he hasn't cleaned, you know, he stinks of the night before, but he lost his virginity. Every bird in the sky was put there by some divine Noah, right?
For him alone.
Exactly. And these are the moments we live for, in which we're drenched with meaning. And I think there's, to be living one's purpose, you work in the world and this happens. What's the meaning of life? I don't know. I don't care. I certainly cannot put it into words, but to have the body and the spirit filled up with so much meaning is everything. I think that is what we're seeking, and it comes as a fullness. I think meaning is an embodied quality, and some days we just get engaged in life in such a way that it's there in its abundance, and everyone else around us can feel that we're full of meaning in abundance. They get caught up in it too. And a good conference is full of meaning because, you know, 80-90% of the room are humming with this. Fuck, everything that anyone says was just the thing that I needed to hear. And the lunch that I went for too long at and the random person I spoke to was just the thing I needed. It's everything gets saturated in a kind of fullness. And I think that there are no real words to describe that, but we all know that those rare and fleeting moments in our lives in which we are in it. And
incredible. Like I've never meditated ever in the traditional sense. I've never meditated. My meditation has always been women and or the contemplation of beauty. I think a lot, and I look out the window a lot, and I stand on balconies a lot, and I wonder, and I'm curious. To me, that's meditation, is to contemplate these things that are beautiful to me, you know, like trying to understand my role in relationship to that. That's my meditation. I've never sat, you know, cross-legged and emptied my mind or had to, you know, concentrate on my breathing. Never done it. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just not my style. Like I want to fill my mind with the sense of the concept of the sublime. I want to think and wonder about it, you know, and I want to contemplate the beauty of mathematics and the beauty of physics, which I don't understand, but I'm fascinated by it because it's the fundamental, you know, underpinnings and the building blocks of us. So incredible, man. Meaning, like motivation. If somebody can link on the comments down here on contemplation or an article or a book on motivation, like what motivates us, what motivates that man who really super man or woman who believes that there is no meaning in this universe at all. It's an absurd world. It's an existential, it's humanistic vision only, and it's only us, and it means nothing, you know? What is our motivation to write a book or to, you know, to...
Yeah, just to be clear, we're not asking for how to motivate your sales force to, you know, get up on a Monday morning. increase the bottom line. It's the very existential
marketing.
into motivation. Yeah. There's a few things that I'm looking I'm looking for coming out of this conversation as well. If you're watching and you've got some kind of link that maybe fleshes out the whole piece around are our life purposes really made to reconnect or to give something back with our former selves or our former struggles?
Yeah, we want to know this.
Anything that might prove or disprove or add a little bit more nuance around that, I'd love to read it. I'd also love to hear from, you always say, many are called, few are chosen.
Yeah.
Many are called, few are chosen.
Many are cold, few are frozen. Just kidding.
If you feel that you've genuinely thrown off the shackles of kind of corporate, commercial, consumeristic life, and you're on a real quest for meaning or a real quest for seeking, I'd love to hear how long you've been in it, how it's going. Did you find anything yet?
What can you share with us?
I would like, yeah. Can you put words to your motivation, and are they different to what we've explained and explored today?
Yeah.
I would love to hear that, and even more, I would love to hear if you feel like you went off seeking, and you genuinely found something, and it's your life's purpose right now to kind of encapsulate or express what you found and give it to the world as a kind of gift or expression or whatever you're doing with it. If you've really found something on your adventures around the world and you feel like you've got some fire that you need to pass on, I want to hear from you. I don't want to hear like, yeah, I went seeking in India for 10 years. I didn't find anything. And all I've come back with is jadedness and cynicism.
Yeah.
I'm looking for, well, actually write that as well. But what I'm really looking for are the few people who have been handed or have caught some kind of fire, and they're in the life and death struggle of trying to squeeze that out in a way that does it justice, before they die or before it's too late.
Yeah, interesting.
And I wonder which listeners and viewers and members of our community are going to surface saying, oh, hey, yeah, that's me. I resonate. And I want to have that conversation with you for sure.
Interesting. Great.
Closing thoughts?
No, I've just enjoyed this conversation, Jordan, as usual. Very good. I learned a lot, and I gained a lot of head scratching moments. more questions than they gain answers, but that's the great concept of what we're doing. Is it's all questions. It's greater questions and greater questions. What is the further question, as opposed to any kind of pat answers, So no, I'm enjoying it a lot. I love the exploration tone of our conversations, because it's an exploration for me. It's on the cutting edge of what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
It totally brought me alive when you asked my motivation, and I didn't know, and I had to explore, and I got that thing, Communitas.
That's great. I'm immediately look that up after this conversation, because I want to know this. In the book you mentioned, Stealing Fire.
Yeah, Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler, I believe.
I'm going to look it up immediately. I want to know. Yeah. This is the kind of things I want to know. I think the whole thing is art and physics and metaphysicism and motivation and desire and man-woman dynamics, it's and beauty, which is, to me, is underscoring everything. So that's my last closing thought.
Yeah, my last closing thought is the discrepancy, I think, between you and I when we talk about beauty, meeting each other in our brokenness, that kind of radical belonging. I've always seen that as an absolute peak. Like these are kind of pointers to the transcendence of the transpersonal, like the highest part of Maslow's hierarchy, because it feels like the utmost of the human experience. And I'm quite intrigued the way that you seem to put it halfway up.
I put it lower, yeah.
Almost as if it's like, come on, like sort it out. If you're not having these experiences and you haven't got it, then get them quick, because there are many layers to go.
There's no reason to exist if you don't have that. In my mind, there's no reason to exist if you're not, if I really believe it. There's no reason to exist if you're not contemplating beauty or seeking the presence of beauty. To me, it's like, what's the point? And I may be, wrong in this, but it feels like it's such a fundamental need that, this is why we have this prehistoric handprints in the caves of, in France and stuff, from the Paleolithic time, because there's a sense of meaning. I'm going to put my handprint, I'm going to embark it here, and I'm going to paint these oxen and these wild animals and these deer and stuff. I'm going to paint them because they were called to some kind of meaning and relevance to that,
Yeah.
So all have been drawn since early times. And I think it's a fundamental thing. Like, imagine that they had food, water, air, obviously. They had a cave, which is shelter. The next thing they have is beauty. They painted art. They wanted to present something on the wall of the cave. So to me, it's right there above the basic levels. And if we don't have that, we're starved for something. So,
it suggests to me to pitch it there, like lower down in that pyramid, as a more essential, more fundamental thing. It's almost like saying this is the antidote to the gray existence, flatland kind of corporate machine,
correct. Politics, everything. It's underneath
drudgery.
It all.
This is a fast antidote to
completely. It's our salvation. It will save us. This is the salvation of our hearts, in my mind. Like beauty, which is the catch-all word I use for that layer, for that element, I really believe is our salvation. When we turn towards beauty, we are saved. We turn away from beauty, we're in this, fundamental extremism, terrorism, politics that is destroying, the world, borders, any of this kind of stuff. Like, like
we don't know who
this,
to trust, conspiracy, agreeing, disagreeing,
that anger that's in the air, because we've turned our face away from beauty, which is a low level need on the hierarchy of needs. And Maslow missed that element as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Perrion's pyramid of needs. Girls, beauty. That's about it. You can do without food and water.
Yeah, totally.
Girls is low level too for me. It's like on the bottom level.
So we got Wi-Fi, girls, a cup of tea,
in that order,
and beauty.
Beauty. There's nothing else.
Excellent. All right.
Okay, Jordan. Good.
Well, let's wrap up here. The typical podcast ending. If you like the episode, give us a like, a thumbs up,
subscribe,
give us a 5-star rating if you're listening on your iTunes or your favorite podcasting. Every little helps. We want to get this message out, definitely to the people who are ready to hear it. So,
and go to our Ars Amorata Facebook group, which is open to everybody. Ars Amorata. Just look up Ars Amorata on Facebook. It's our open group. If you want to be involved in our close conversation in our men's group, it's called the Amorati, and you go to amorati.net and apply for that. The class might be closed right now, but you'll get on the wait list for the next class. We open it 2 or 3 times a year. So if you're interested in that, go to amorati.net and join in this conversation, these gatherings that we talked about at the beginning, these live international conferences, which we're doing virtual this weekend because we can't get together in person, but we'd love to have you. If this conversation resonates with you and draws you hard and you have something to contribute, then we want to hear from you. We want you we want you on our side. We want you on our team. We want to spread this to the world. So.
Great. All right. Thanks, Zan. Thank you for watching or listening.
Take care, man.